The sun has set in Night City. Your fixer just came in with a new job. Your chrome is shiny and new. It's time to get your Edge Runner crew and hit the streets, Chumba. I'm Big Mike, and this is Cyberpunk 2020. Cyberpunk 2020 is the second edition of the game of the same name. You play an edge runner, a survivor in a future full of body mods, guns, and violence. Your goal is to make money, to survive, to live. Or, if you like, make the world a better place. First, we cover core mechanics. All of Cyberpunk 2020 goes by difficulty checks, or just called checks in this system. To pass any check within Cyberpunk 2020, you roll 1d10, add the appropriate stat, and the appropriate skill that matches it. Simple. There's modifiers as usual, and if you roll a 1, it's our old friend the critical fail, this time with a custom fumble table, courtesy of the developers. A 10 means you get to keep that result, and roll again to add to it. Of course, we have to cover how you make a character, and for that, we have to explain roles. There are 9 classes in Cyberpunk known as roles in the system. Rocker Boys, the modern equivalent of a bard. Solos, your fighter equivalent, also known as that guy with the big guns. Netrunners, also known as just really wired hackers. Corporates, slick businessmen who actually help broker deals. Techies, hardware specialists that are having a hell of a lot of fun bodging their way through everything. Cops, who are just literal cops. Fixers, who are more streetwise wheelers and dealers who help set things up. Medias, who help control information and distribute it across the city. And nomads, which are basically all Mad Max characters. Each class has a unique ability that helps focus it, as well as select skills that are part of their class. We'll cover those skills in a bit. But first, the core stats. These are intelligence, reflexes, technical ability, cool, attractiveness, luck, movement allowance, body type, and empathy. From each of these come your derived stats, and we're not going to be going into them in great detail since the book covers them a lot better, but they're designed to kind of round out your character and make them really diversified. But what diversifies your character even more is what's known as the Lifepath System. A big part of Cyberpunk is in fact the Lifepath System, and it's known across several of Arthouse-Orion's works as a company. By rolling or choosing character background options, players can get modifications to stats in various interesting ways, from having a goal of finding your lover's killer to making friends with a local combat teacher. It's a very interesting part of the system and gives you a lot to work with at the very start. Next is skills. When you pick your role, you also get a set of 10 career skills that, while not exclusive to you, you are to put 40 points into, 1 point per rank, to maximize your effectiveness with the role that you've chosen. Each role also has a special ability skill that's unique to them. Additionally, you add your reflex to your intelligence to assign points to what's known as pickup skills. These are skills outside of the career ones that your character learned whilst growing up. But next is the part you've all been waiting for. Cyberpunk and hardware. Because it wouldn't be Cyberpunk if we didn't talk about modding the meat. Long story short, if you've got the money, you can put it into your body or have it taken out, or altered in some way you find interesting. However, the more shit you put in your flesh, the more humanity it costs. Good news is that for every 10 points of humanity that improvement costs, it only costs you 1 empathy, rounded down. Bad news is, for some of these, you have to roll dice to see how much humanity you lose. You also have to go to therapy. No, I'm not kidding about that. They have cyber psychologists. You get strapped to a heavy mental couch and talk about your feelings. This system is fucking awesome. Moving right along, combat. To roll initiative, you roll 1d10 plus reflex. Highest goes first. There's a few things you can do to mod that result though, like saying you'll fast draw or being so cybernetically jacked that it actually affects how quick you go. You can take as many actions as you want, but it's -3 to all of those actions for each extra one you take, and that includes moving. Ranged weapons are reflex plus weapon skill plus 1d10. And you have to hit a DC based on how far away the opponent is. Because let's be honest, you can't dodge a bullet. You just can't. Let it go. Some weapons have automatic fire at different intervals, which lets you hit the same target or multiple targets, depending on their settings. Melee is attacker's reflex plus skill plus 1d10, versus the defender's reflex, their appropriate skill, plus 1d10. The defending skill is determined by which skill is appropriate for that situation. Damage. Jesus Christ, this is complex. Just show the damage chart. What the fuck even is that? Okay, first of all, you can wear armor, which can be in separate areas because Kevlar vests are a thing, and armor negates only so much damage. Next is where you are hit, which is determined by rolling 1d10 and matching it on the chart. Then there's the body type modifier for how big and tough you are, and that shrugs off even more damage, but only down to a minimum of 1 because the bullet is still fucking inside you. Also, as you take damage, you fill up these checkboxes that start issuing penalties the more you take. On top of that, you have to roll a stun save, which is equal to your body type value, which determines if you're even knocked out by the hit you get, and that takes penalties the more damage you take, and that becomes a fucking death save if you take too much damage, that it starts filling the mortal boxes, and if you feel that, you fucking die. And on top of it, there's a bloody table for Hollywood-style overacting, and I still don't know whether that comes into play. Thank you! And after all of that, you would think it would be really hard to die in this system, but the average armor jacket stops 14 damage, and this system sells fucking high explosives that do 8d10 damage per kilogram at a really fucking cheap price. I love you, Mike Pondsmith, but please fix this in Cyberpunk Red. There's a lot more about net running, but the entire subsystem of that is so huge and expansive that it's practically its own RPG game. As you get to buy a cyber deck to enter the net, the programs you use, and where you physically travel in a computer network and the defenses therein, so pursue it at your own leisure. And lastly, there's the 4 rules of Cyberpunk. Style over substance, attitude is everything, live on the edge, and break the rules. I'm Big Mike, and this is Cyberpunk 2020. Well, the tutorial for it. See you then!